which is fantastic because as leaders, in HR, as entrepreneurs, as authors, podcasters, whatever it is, we all want to make an impact. That's what we're doing this for. And we want to make a great impact. And sometimes we focus so much on what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? And yeah, you can get to a limit or a place that says, yeah, I accomplished a lot. But then there comes the next level of growth that says, how can more be accomplished? I need to rely on others. And that's when you get a team. And when you have a coach and people who support you that can say, Dave, I love what you're doing. Here's how you can do even better. But guess what? Here's how you can surround yourself with people who will elevate you to a level that you've never dreamed of. Wow, that's a great world.
Everyone, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. I have another great author on the podcast. Excited, just back from living out in the woods with his son, and he's enjoying being in the house again, which is great. Ben's here to join us. He's put away all of his camping gear, and he's ready to talk authorship. Really excited to have Ben on the podcast. Ben, welcome to Living the Next Chapter.
Well, thank you so much. I got to say, that's the most unique introduction I've ever received.
There you go, right? So you're out of the tent, and you're here in the house again, which is awesome. Tell us a little bit about your little trip with your son. This sounds like such a fun time.
Yeah, it was great. So it was scout camp, and my son's new into it, and this is my first time as a leader. I did it as a young boy, and I got the eagle and everything. So it was a great experience being with him, completely outdoors. It was very much in the wilderness, so bear country. We had to have the bear boxes. We were told there was a bear there the day before we arrived. And, it's always a mix, right? It's a good thing we didn't see a bear, but it's also kind of like, oh, it would have been cool to see a bear, right?
Yeah.
But yeah,
I prefer my bears on TV.
Yes, exactly. right. Just to talk about them. But yeah, living outside for the week, it was beautiful, gorgeous weather. But yeah, I had this weird sensation when I got back that it's like, wait, I'm indoors. This is kind of weird. And I've never experienced that before.
There you go. Good. Everyone was safe. You had a good time. That sounds like a lot of fun. It's a lot of good memories too, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. My son says it was the best 5 days of his life, which is great.
See, there you go. That sounds should be like on a greeting card or something.
Right.
Sounds good. Awesome. I'm glad you had a good, safe, fun time. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Good. So Ben, your background is in HR.
Uh-huh.
I've done a small amount of HR in my background. You've done it to a very wide breadth and degree. Talk us a little bit about your HR background.
Yeah, so I did the bachelor's in HR, and then I went on to get the master's. And in fact, at first, I didn't know anything about HR, right? It's probably very common with people. In fact, I don't know the stats, but a majority of people who get into HR fall into HR. In other words, they don't plan to get into HR, right? But when I was in college, I was trying computer science, but then I wasn't super happy with that direction. And so I took one of those quizzes and talked to my counselor, and she says, hey, looks like you might do well in employee relations. Didn't know what that was. And she said, well, try this intro to HR class. Still didn't know what that was, but said, sure, I'll take it. And it was very much common sense to me. I did extremely well in all my classes and just, excelled through there, finished the bachelor's, got my an internship, actually 2 different internships in HR, and decided, yeah, I really like this. And so I entered a company. It was actually with trampoline parks. We built and managed trampoline parks. And it was small at the time. We started with 3 locations and less than 50 employees. But over the 7 years that I worked there, we grew it to about 75 locations and almost 2,000 employees in 5 different countries. So the range of experience that I had with all the state laws and all the country laws and all the different people that we worked with was both fascinating and challenging. It was very fun.
Wow. So my background in HR very limited compared to yours. But one thing I loved about HR was just the connection with people, right? Well, other meetings, you're looking at numbers and spreadsheets. Here we're talking about people and helping people live a healthier life and watching their safety and making sure that we're treating people the best possible way so they stay with our company, training and equipping our teams. That was the things I really loved about HR. Is that kind of where you resonate as well?
Well, yeah. I love the human side of employees, right? And not just the number, not just the task, not just the what's your output. But yeah, when you can get to know them as a human being and as a person where you can connect and have that relationship. And when we can do that properly, we know in the best companies that when they do that, they allow the employee, let's say, to unlock, right? Or unleash. and allow them to work their strengths, which is better for everybody. They're happier, they're more productive. We all enjoy our jobs more. And in HR specifically, we're in a place to see that. We can ask those questions. And it's not so much, well, you're not performing, but it's having those conversations. Well, what do you enjoy? How can I help you? Is there anything else that we can do for you? Kind of thing.
Yeah. And that's a good lesson, I think, whether you're in HR full-time or you're a manager and you're leading a team, there's a human element to what you do day to day. I know my wife works in a warehouse and she leads the meetings every morning. And you have a group of people gathering around at 10 a.m. at the start of the shift. And some of these people have just found out that they have lost a loved one, or maybe their children are sick today and their mind is somewhere else. And here you are trying to get the group together and get them ready for the day and get started. Everyone's at a different point in their day. And you have to understand that we're a group of human beings together working on the same task, but understand that people need you in different ways, right? So keep your radar up a little bit when you're working with people in your community and in your job place, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll say something to that. So I left my HR executive position in February of 2020. Good timing, I know. But
wow.
It's because I had gone through my personal journey, overcoming an addiction and learning a lot about myself. I had been the professional or the successful professional executive in my 20s, traveling the world, over all sorts of people. And yet, as a professional, I suffered in silence for many reasons, okay? And it was one of those things where it's like, well, I'm HR, I'm supposed to help everybody else. Who am I supposed to turn to? And I was a successful person, and I had learned to do that alone. So I isolated. And when I isolated, I was like, well, I don't know who I can turn to. I have to live up to this image of picture perfect Ben, so I can't tell anybody I'm suffering. And maybe I'll tell the rest of the story later, but I was living that world, and then I recovered from that world. Okay, I went to therapy, I overcame some things, and I discovered coaching. I discovered more about my emotions and my thoughts and how I saw myself, and super important things. And so I turned my life around, and I was like, wow, even though after 7 years of helping to grow this company, having my boss, the CEO say, Ben, we have nothing against you, we just hate HR. And me taking, well, how am I supposed to take that, right? I'm doing my best. I know what HR can bring to a company, but apparently you don't care. You don't value it. And I took that to mean they don't care about me and they don't value me. And that was hard to take. It had a huge hit on my self-confidence. But anyway, to the point of what I'm getting at is I left that executive position saying, wow, I have a message. Successful professional who suffers in silence. Does anybody else feel that way? Turns out many, many people do. I talked to my friends and professionals and they said, bro, we all feel this way. The problem is nobody talks about it. And so I left and I turned right around to my HR associations and I said, hey, I have a solution for you. I know what you go through and I know what you see at work. We see the humanity, we see the suffering in silence, and now I have a solution on what to do. But at the time, February of 2020, they said, well, we don't talk about emotions at work. That's like, well, right. That's too bad. But now, 4 years later, after the pandemic and some other things, it is much more common and acceptable to talk about emotions at work, to allow people to see this humanity that you're saying. When we do get into a meeting and somebody's had the loss of a loved one, it's okay to address it in an appropriate way. We don't have to say, sorry, you can't deal with that for the next 8 hours, and I still need 100% output from you. No. We can talk to them. We can give them the support. In fact, I contract with a company called Life Guides, and it's a benefit that we offer employees or employers to give to their employees for free, right? And that's exactly what we do. If you need somebody to talk to who truly understands and who's more casual than therapy but more qualified than a friend is what we call it, then guess what? There's somebody who understands, and that is so valuable. So from my perspective as former HR, now coach, and having solutions like coaching and, this company that I work with, and it's amazing, and it's making huge strides in the world.
Wow. Okay, and then when does the idea of writing a book fit into the plans and the transition from HR into coaching?
Yeah, good question. I never had a plan to write a book originally, right? But after a few years of taking copious notes on my phone after conference and coaching, I was like, wow, there's a theme here. There's a lot of good stuff in here, a lot of material. And I actually, at first, I just put it all on my computer. I took it from my phone and put it on my computer, and I had about 40,000 words. And I was like, all right, well, this is a pretty good, healthy length for a book. And then I had to organize, and I had to get an outline, and I had to go through all the normal process of writing a book. But again, I thought, wow, I have a book here. And part of the process was, I hired a coach because, I believe in coaching. I am a coach. And this coach at the time said, well, you need 60,000 words. And I was like, 20,000 more words? Are you kidding me? So I kind of put it on the back burner and didn't worry about it for a while. But a year or so later, again, after having more coaching experience, having coached, hundreds of hours and hundreds of people, again, I saw a common theme that always when these entrepreneurs, when these business leaders, when people who wanted to grow in their lives, when they came to me, it always came down to the same thing, how they saw themselves. Or in other words, self-perception. Okay? Every time. If somebody, and this is interesting too, because, suffer in silence and we turn to our favorite behavior, our coping mechanisms. And some very successful people, as we know, turn to alcohol or turn to, just binge watching TV, right? It can be any level of the behavior, but everybody has it in some way. And so, for example, one of the guys I coach, he is a senior director, which is pretty high in his company. And he's been promoted since we've been talking together. And in this process, he's probably 6 months in. He's like, you know what? I haven't been fully honest with you. And I need to tell you something. Okay. I drink a lot. And my father was an alcoholic. And I don't want to be that way, but I'm afraid I'm going to be that way and expect to my kids and everything else. I said, okay, well, we can work through it because I understand how the addictions work. I never drank. I had my addiction, so I understand how the cycle works, and it's all very similar. But what it came down to is, until he saw himself differently, he didn't stop drinking. But when he saw himself differently, when he saw himself differently, he stopped drinking. Now, how does that make sense? Well, here's the vocabulary that people start to use. He said himself, the old me. Right? The old me did that. The new me, I feel like a new person. Yeah, because he's taking on a new identity. The old me drank. The old me felt that way. The old me reacted that way. But the new me, I do things differently. And that is powerful. And I could give you lots of examples of how that works, but it always came down to that. And so I said, there are a lot of books out there, of course. But here's the big problem that I've discovered. That most of the world teaches us to define our lives based on our results. Think about it. You go to school, and what are you asked to do? Work hard so you can get what? A grade, right? And if you get an A, hey, you are an A student. That's your identity. And you want to be an A student because they get scholarships, and they get the stickers, and they get the rewards and everything else. And you're like, yeah, I want to be that, right? And so we stress about behaviors because we say, well, how am I going to get an A? Well, I'll study. I'll get a good relationship with the teacher or whatever it is. I'll put in more hours, right? And so we stress about that in hopes to get the A. And if you do get the A, you feel great. If you don't, and you get a B or a C after you've put in all that effort, then you start to question yourself. Well, I'm putting in just as much work as Johnny over there, but I'm not getting the A. So what's the problem? I must be the problem. Apparently, I am not an A student. And that becomes an identity. Is that making sense?
Mm-hmm. Right. Yep. I'm following you.
Yeah.
Yes.
So then one more example, back to HR, right? And this is huge. Okay. Huge. We go into the workplace again with this understanding and this cultural programming of results. You need to make me money. You need to perform. You need to do well on your performance appraisal. And if you do, you might get a raise. And if you do, you might get a promotion. Yay! And when you get a promotion, you get a new title, which is a new identity. Ooh, I'm an employee today, but if I can be a manager tomorrow, my life will completely change, right? So we go completely based on those identities. But when we see it that way, we see it as external to us. In other words, we don't have full control. So we work hard. We put in the extra hours. I'm working 74 hours a day, or not a day. That'd be crazy. A week.
Yeah.
74 hours a week. My boss must see this. And when he or she does, then I will become a leader. I'll get that promotion finally. But then performance appraisal comes around and you're passed over and you don't get the promotion.
Right.
You say, what a waste of time. I hate this place. Apparently I'm not going to be a leader. Nobody cares about me. And boom, because your sense of identity is offended, or not lived up to, then all of a sudden the world looks differently. So again, the problem is that the world teaches us you have to get the results in order to become something else. But what I saw is the better way, the more powerful way, is if we can learn to change our identity first, the results we want will come. Now, how does that make sense? We all do it. We all follow this cycle. You just have to change some small things. Because every single day we're having thoughts and stories in our mind that tell us who we are. Okay? You, Dave, you have a desire to be a full-time podcaster, right?
Wow, you just read my mind. Yeah, you're right. Yes.
And I, we don't know each other super well, but I already love the way you do podcasts. The questions you ask, the way you do things, the variety that you bring to the podcasts, and the value that you're bringing. I mean, I've done a lot of podcasts, but I really enjoy being with you because of how you listen, what questions you ask, and how you go about it, okay? So me, from the outside, I already see you as an amazing podcaster. And I'm sure on a lot of fronts, you believe that, yes, I'm a good podcaster and I can go forward with this. But at the same time, there's something that has stopped you from being a full-time podcaster. Is this true?
I feel like I'm being coached right now, and I'm loving every second of this, by the way. Thank you. Yeah, there is. There's hesitancy. There's the idea of taking a leap and not knowing if I'm going to land and where. Yeah, there's a lot going on behind the scenes.
Yes. And thank you, Dave. And, listeners, I got Dave's permission before this. So, hey, I'm not just going in for it.
It's great.
But yeah, we use different language, right? Okay, I'm going to take the leap. I'm not sure where I'm going to land and everything else. But let's try something. I'm going to fast forward through this quote unquote coaching session. Okay.
This is fun.
If you thought 3 years from now, if you thought ahead 3 years, okay, 3 years ahead, and you already knew that you were a full-time podcaster, and you knew that you were getting the numbers that you wanted, the listeners, the sponsorships, whatever you want your podcast to look like, right? You just knew that you were a successful podcaster, okay? You saw that 3 years ahead. How would that change how you felt about it now?
I know the future self would be like, why did you wait so long? You could have been here so much sooner.
Yeah.
Had you just realized what was ahead.
There you go.
I know that's what I would say to myself immediately.
Yes. Powerful. So, see, you already taught us a powerful lesson. The future self, that identity, who has already gotten the results, says to you, you can do this, man. You can do it now. You can do it sooner than I did. And you're like, oh, wow. As opposed to, what most of us do is we don't think ahead like that. Or when we do think ahead, we say, with total fear, I don't know how that's going to happen. 3 years, are you kidding me? I'm here and I want to be there and I don't even know how I'm going to bridge that gap. And then we live in fear and we say, well, because of that fear, I don't want to feel like an imposter, have imposter syndrome. So I'm just not going to do it. I'll delay it. I'll do it tomorrow. It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Is that making sense?
Right. 100%. Yep.
Yeah. So a big, long story for your question. But again, it always comes down to how we see ourselves. And if we can program ourselves to create the identity that we want, our ideal self, as James Allen calls it, then we can start to create our ideal life. And it is absolutely amazing.
Okay, I want to take a concept from HR that's pretty relevant right now, and it's in the news a lot. People talk about it in relation to quiet quitting at work, and where maybe you don't get the recognition, you don't get to be promoted, you feel like you get overlooked, and you start quiet quitting at work, where you're not as engaged as you were, or maybe you're looking at other things on your computer for another job while you're at work. You're just kind of backing away slowly. In podcasting terms, we would call that pod fading, where you just kind of just don't show up anymore. You're not showing up at work. You're quiet quitting. How do we quiet quit on ourselves?
Ooh, how do we quiet quit ourselves? Wow, that's a great question.
Hmm.
And yes, unfortunately, it happens very often, right? And it shows up in different ways, like you're saying. It could show up in our job. We could, sit in the chair but not be there, kind of thing. So how do we quiet quit on ourselves? Is when you just go through the motions. Well, I have my job and I got to go, and I have my kids and I guess I got to be there. And I got to go to church. I got to fulfill my responsibilities, but that's about as far as I go. And then you start to turn to coping mechanisms. So we all recognize this, right? It's because we try to fill our lives with something else that makes us feel good. I'll speak about this for a second. Every behavior we do is based on an emotional need. In other words, we always want to feel a certain way. We want to feel good or we want to avoid pain, and that defines our behavior 100% every time. So if we're in a place of quiet quitting on ourselves, that means I saw my potential. I wanted to be an author. I wanted to be a full-time podcaster. I wanted to get the director promotion, but it's not happening. It didn't happen. I tried and failed. I tried and failed. I tried and failed. And I'm sick and tired of trying and failing because nobody sees my value and it's just not happening. So rather than quit and say I'm out, I'm just going to stay and not care. Right? It's kind of what it looks like. Do you agree? Yeah. I'm just going to stay so I don't look like a quitter, but really I'm not doing anything. And so, because all of this in our mind, quote unquote, hasn't worked or isn't working, then our brain, by definition and by chemical responses, says, I looked for a good feeling. I didn't find it. And now I don't like how I feel because I don't feel success. I don't feel progress. I don't feel happy, and I need something. One of the fastest things people turn to is social media scrolling. Well, let me look at what Johnny's doing because he looks happy. Oh, Sally got the promotion. Wow, lucky her. We'll be scroll and scroll and scroll. And even if at first we're like, okay, I know the dangers of social media, and I know. And again, I'm not saying social media is totally bad, but I know that sometimes we can get caught in it, but I'll only spend 5 minutes tonight. It's fine. I'll do it right before bed. 2 hours later, I'm like, man, I should probably go to bed, right? And then the cycle begins. And now your quiet quitting starts to turn into a little bit of shame. Now some self-loathing because you're like, wow, I can't even get here. And now I'm wasting time in other places. I watched 7 hours of my favorite episode yesterday. Maybe that wasn't the smartest idea, where I ate that whole sleeve of Oreos. The list goes on and it's different for everybody, but everybody has their coping mechanism. Is this answering your question?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So again,
if we compare ourselves to somebody's highlights, right? And our failed attempt, or, we tried and we didn't succeed, but then we go on social media and we see this person who just seems to be winning at life. Mm-hmm. We're like, well, that's not fair. It's like comparing someone's home run to your strikeout.
Right.
It's like, well, I tried. I did the same thing they did, but I didn't get the same result. So I'm not good at this.
Exactly.
But how many home runs are there in a game?
Well, for real. I mean,
not every time, right?
Yeah. The best baseball players have about an average of what, 0.3, right? Yeah. So they fail 7 out of 10 times. And yet they're the best.
Good point. Right.
Yeah. So what was my other thought? I don't know. Let's keep going here.
Yeah. So the other part about quiet quitting is just that how it robs your morale. Yeah. You have no desire to do the thing anymore. You show up, you do the minimum. They come to you, they're like, hey, Ben, we see greatness in you. We'd like to talk to you about, taking a little more responsibility. You're like, no. You're like, well, why? You're so good at what you do. No, I'm not motivated to do anything beyond my job description. Mm-hmm. At 7 o'clock, I punch out, and don't even talk to me at 7:01. I don't exist. Right. This company doesn't, whatever. I have no thoughts about this place after I punch out. And 1 minute before I punch in, I'm not thinking about this job. Right? They just show up, do the thing, and leave. Yeah. And I think we do that so much in our relationships. We do that as a parent. You could have gone to this camping trip with your son and be like, I know it's 7 p.m. Go to bed. The day's over. I'm just going to go chill. Right. This is a time to bond with your son. This isn't a time just to be like, I'm going to phone it in. Right. Exactly. You want to build this relationships. You want to build and take advantage of that time. So I just think as we quiet quit, either at work or on ourselves, that we're robbing ourselves and those around us of better morale, better experiences, and better memories. So that's kind of what I'm hoping to get out of this conversation. It's encourage somebody to see that and kind of go, I'm going to try better.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll speak to it a little bit in terms of my book too. I call that emotional pain, because you've tried so hard and you've tried to get something, but it's been failure after failure or felt like it, right? And now you just have this sense of emotional pain. It hurts, and I hate feeling the way that I do. And I want to stop feeling that way. And that explains why, even when somebody comes out of the blue and says, Dave, you know what? We've seen your work. We want you to do this. We want to offer you a promotion. Normally, let's say 7 months ago in this hypothetical scenario, you'd be like, wow, finally. But you've been in 7 months of emotional pain saying nobody cares. Everybody looks over me kind of thing. And now that you're bringing it to me, no, you're too late, buddy. And what your brain is truly saying is, I don't want to get hurt again. I can't trust that, And so what's safer is I'm going to stay where I am. But that's painful. That's a different sense of pain, right? When we look back that night and we say, oh, are you kidding me? We can have different thoughts, right? We can say, man, my boss offered me a promotion. How did I react? How stupid am I? I'm a failure again, and we go deeper. Or we could even get mad and we say, the audacity of that person offered me a promotion 7 months late. No, I'm going to quiet quit even harder, So again, we react in many, many different ways. But here's what happens. And to your point of any listener who might feel this way, here is the solution. You worked for me, even as, yes, a quiet quitter in an executive HR position, who appeared that I had everything. The house, the car, traveling the world, an executive in my 20s, all this great stuff, sure. But yeah, I didn't know the term at the time, but I probably quiet quit for a while. Certainly I did. I part of my story that I shared was I isolated. I was a leader, I was in HR, and I was successful, right? And I felt like, who can I relate with? Not that I was better than others, but it's just like, well, who can I relate with, right? And I learned to isolate, which means I didn't turn to anybody. A part of the reverse of this situation was that I learned to reach out, be vulnerable, ask for help. I did therapy. I did coaching. I reached out to cousins. I reached out to friends, and we just had conversations that we had never had before. And as I started to realize that, hey, even though some people think, okay, sure, picture perfect Ben, and yeah, there are aspects of life that, yeah, I'm really good at. But at the same time, I don't have to live a quote unquote picture perfect life. I don't have to be perfect, for crying out loud. Nobody's perfect. So when I made those human to human connections and rebuilt relationships, that's when I came out of the shell, realized that I was okay, and started to have hope again. Hope to grow again. Hope to try again. And this rebuilt my self-confidence. I still had the capabilities, but I really needed that hope. And I really needed to believe in myself again. Because like I said, when I had comments like my boss told me, and all my coworkers pretty much thought of me and HR as a necessary evil, I thought, well, what's my purpose here? But again, I turned it around and I said, look, I have incredible value to bring to people into the world. And I can do that. And what I've done is I've strengthened that identity. So even when the results don't work, even when, the entire world hasn't bought a copy of my book yet, even when the entire world doesn't listen to my podcast yet, when those perfect results aren't there, that's okay. Because I realize it's part of the journey. And I've already decided who I am and who I want to be. And that changes life. Let me tell you this. When you change the way you see yourself, the world you see changes.
I like that. I like that a lot. One other thing I remember from my HR days, Ben, is I remember talking to as an HR person, I remember talking to the person leading the company, and I was saying we need to do some more training with our team, and this is some of the things I'd like to work on as team training things. And they said, and the person in leadership was like, well, if we put all this money into training, what happens if we train these people and they leave? Right? We're going to invest all this money in them. We're going to help grow them, and they're just going to go move to some other company or a different department. And I said to them, well, what if we don't train them and they stay?
Exactly.
And he just looked at me like, okay, all right, okay, I see what your point. Yeah, because you want to grow your team and your people, right? And I think that's the other part for ourselves personally is take that same thing and apply it to yourself. We have to keep growing. We have to keep moving and finding these things in our life, working with a coach, right? Reading the books, learning new things. What if we don't train ourselves? What if we don't grow and we just stay where we are? I think there's a danger in that. I think we really need to be personally working and growing as ourself. So as a coach, kind of how do you help people in that aspect?
Yes. Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. A thought that comes to me is, my book's called How We See Ourselves. And there's definitely that aspect. We all live it, right? We see ourselves in different ways. But there's also the aspect of what you and I had talked about. Dave, you may have moments where even though you're living the life of a successful podcaster, you might have the moments of, man, I just don't know if this is worth it. I don't know if it's working. My podcasts aren't the numbers and blah, blah, blah. And so you might have moments of doubt. And you say, I just don't know if I'm built, cut out to be this podcaster. And yet, from my point of view, I still see, wow, Dave, amazing, amazing, amazing guy, right? So how somebody else sees us can be super valuable sometimes because they can believe in us when we might struggle to believe in ourselves. That is the value of a coach specifically because we are 100% committed to you. We see your thoughts because we listen to you. We see how you think about yourself because we listen to you. Okay, we get to know you in those ways. And we reflect always in ways that help build you up and help reprogram those thoughts. We catch the negative ones and say, let's challenge those. Are those true? And if not, let's not believe them anymore. Let's throw out those negative and limiting beliefs. And you go, wow, I can do that. It's so empowering to have permission to not have to believe those thoughts anymore. Wow, life-changing. And then instead of continuously repeating those negative thoughts in our mind and we wonder why we're depressed, we're scared, we reprogram and reframe things in your mind so that you can focus more on the positives, what is working, what can work, who you are, who you can become. And that changes everything. And then we help, I'm speaking from the coach's perspective, but regardless, you make sure that you surround yourself with people who believe in you, right? You want to live with people who say, yeah, Dave, you can do this. This is great. How can I help you? I believe in you. I love your podcast. I love what you're doing and keep going because you need those people who believe in you.
And then if you're thinking, well, do I really need a coach? Then just go to any sporting event and watch Michael Jordan do his thing and realize there's a coach that can put him on the bench if he has to, right? There's a leader that leads Michael Jordan. There's a leader that leads your favorite football player, soccer player, baseball, whatever. There's somebody there who's accountable for your success and to motivate you. So don't think that even though if you're like, I feel like I'm at the top of my game, I don't need any help. There are people at the top of their game and they look to a coach every day. So consider that.
Yeah, and I'll share a cool story about that. And speaking of Michael Jordan, right? I actually read this in a book recently where, it's talking about Michael Jordan. And even from the beginning, he was an excellent player. Okay, super great as an individual player. But his team did not win the championships for years, even though Michael Jordan was on that team, even though he was scoring a lot of points and doing an amazing job. So even though he himself was, yes, at the top of his game, his team wasn't winning championships. And it wasn't until a new coach came in and saw Michael Jordan for his strengths and then realized, in order to get him to the next level, what does he need? He needs a triad. He needs a Scottie Pippen. Yeah. And he needs people who can help Michael Jordan shine even more. And it's not to make Michael Jordan the star, but it's to use his strengths even more so that his strength can bless a team and the team can be champions.
Good point of view. I like that.
Which is fantastic because as leaders, in HR, as entrepreneurs, as authors, podcasters, whatever it is, we all want to make an impact. That's what we're doing this for. And we want to make a great impact. And sometimes we focus so much on what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? And yeah, you can get to a limit or a place that says, yeah, I accomplished a lot. But then there comes the next level of growth that says, how can more be accomplished? I need to rely on others. And that's when you get a team. And when you have a coach and people who support you that can say, Dave, I love what you're doing. Here's how you can do even better. But guess what? Here's how you can surround yourself with people who will elevate you to a level that you've never dreamed of. Wow, that's a great world.
Nice. Okay, and then this all leads right back to your book and how we see ourselves. For the reader, Ben, they have a copy of your book in their hands. They're going to read it for the first time. They're ready to click buy online or in a store. They're ready to take it up to the counter and pull out their hard-earned money to buy your book. What's your love letter to a reader? What do you want them to know about this book before they read the first word?
Ooh, that's a great question. So really, I'm going to go back to what I said before. When you learn to change the way you see yourself, the world you see changes. So if you're after a different life, a better life, different results, then this book will help you get that. Why? Because it'll help you change the way you see yourself. It'll help you change the way you feel about yourself. And doing so will allow you to have lasting results. And not just, oh, sure, I got the promotion, but I'm still unhappy. No, you'll create the life that you want that is better than you even dreamed of.
No, the one thing I'd share with people too, Ben, is I think all of us need 3 people in our life. This is modeled in different ways and different contexts, but for me, I need someone in my life who's slightly ahead of me on a path that I can look to for inspiration and guidance, and they have something that I want. So I'm looking to them. I also have somebody beside me who's in the same boat that I am, kind of the same spot. We're kind of equals, and we're working together towards that goal of the person ahead of us. But also the third is the person behind me who looks to me as inspiration to some degree. And how do I help them get caught up to where I am? And then all of us work towards the goal of what's ahead. So those are the 3 people that I need in my life. And I think when you talk about being so inwardly focused that you don't see what's happening around you, you lose sight of the people who look to you as inspiration or who inspire you. So I think as much as we can get beyond ourselves as well, in addition to your book, kind of getting outside of who we are, will help us to understand where we fit into this world. And that there's your son looking up to you. My dad's a camper, and I feel safe even there's bears. My dad's here. I'm good. There's people who rely on you. There's people who look to you as inspiration, and you're the hero to them. And you might not even know that, right? They might be quietly in the background watching your progress and going, I really like Ben. I like what Ben's doing. I think I need to hire Ben as a coach, or I want to buy his book, or I want to support Ben. And you don't even know who they are, but they're watching going, there's something about Ben. I just want people listening to realize that there are people looking at you today, whether you're sitting at your desk as an HR professional going, am I even making a difference here? Like, does this even matter? Or you're that person who's just been quietly quitting on life and going, I don't even know if I need to do this anymore, this job, this relationship, whatever. There's people looking to you. So try to look beyond yourself a little bit. Can you kind of add a little bit of flavor to that thought as well, Ben?
Yeah, 100%. I love what you said, Dave. Wow. Glad we have this record. This is amazing. So adding to that thought, I'm going to say a bunch of thoughts. Maybe it won't be super organized, but yes, when you're in an addiction, the fastest way to get out of an addiction is to build relationships. And I even spoke to my wife about this the other day, and she's like, yeah, because it's not about you anymore. It's not just about you. It's like, wow, you're living for somebody. You're changing for somebody else, right? Another thought from my book. I talk about I talk about pride, I talk about shame, and I talk about confidence. So what I mean is, shame is when you see yourself and you want nobody else to see what you see. Pride is when you see yourself and you're like, wow, everybody look at me, right? But confidence is when you see yourself and you recognize your strengths and you validate your strengths, but because of that, you are completely focused on the other person. That is confidence. So you show up, but you are there for them. And then they sense that. They say, wow, what do they have? I want to know what they have. But again, when you get to this point where you've understood your emotions, you've controlled your thoughts, you know who you are, that allows you to focus on others. And when you do, life is so much more fulfilling. You don't need the addictions. You don't get stuck in the coping mechanisms, but you can make the impact that you want because you're able to focus on the others. And I'll take it back to HR, because HR might be thinking, okay, but I do focus on others. That's my entire job, right? But we've forgotten that main point, because we focus on the others to the detriment of ourselves if we do not first understand ourselves and give ourselves that self-care. Okay. Now, I've spoken to thousands of HR professionals, and I know that they're thinking, yes, that is so true. We do need that self-care. But you have to take it past that. Okay. Once you leave that podcast, you felt good, cool, but then choose something to do about it. If there's something you need to do differently to lift you up, to fill your cup, do it. If you need to read the book, if you need to hire the coach, if you need to go to the meeting, if you need to schedule that 30 minutes a day just for you, do it. Because then you'll be able to show up better for others. They will sense the change, then they will be influenced by the change, and you'll be able to make the impact that you want.
Nice. It's great. But I love listening to you. Really good. So take us to the website, Ben. I want to wrap up because of time-wise and get you back out there camping again, or something. You go back outside just to realize what it's like to go outside again. Take us to the website. And then again, at the end, I have a question to kind of wrap up our thoughts. But talk about the book. Where can we get it? And how do we connect with you?
Perfect. Yeah. So I tried to make it easy. So the book is called How We See Ourselves. And you just go to the website, howweseeourselves.com. You can learn all about it. You can even get a free chapter, get a little sample. You can buy the book anywhere. You can buy a signed copy on my website and I'll send it to you, or you can buy it from Amazon or any other online distributor. So I've tried to make it super easy for you to get your hands on it.
Excellent. Sounds like a great resource that everyone needs on their desk, on their shelf, and kind of walking through and leading you through. For you, Ben, the one thing I'd love to kind of pull out, just for those listening, let's do a little bonus for people here, Ben. With all your HR background, you've sat in interviews, you've sat in meetings, you've worked with teams, you've hired people. For that person listening, and they're going to be going into a job interview this week, they're going to be going into a meeting, or they're going to have to present themselves to somebody in leadership. Any little tips for us on how we can wow our next interview or interaction with someone above us at work so that we can maybe get the thing that we're really hoping to get? Any little tips that we can do from an HR perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. And here's what it comes down to, right? How do we see ourselves? See yourself already getting the position. Okay? If you can go in with that confidence, not that pride, not that arrogance, but thinking, yeah, I could get this position. I'm worthy of this position. If you go in with that emotional attitude, that'll make a difference. Why? Because instead of answering every single question as, I have to get this perfect so for them to hopefully give me the job, and we come from a place of fear and anxiety and lack of confidence, but we say, yeah, I could definitely do this job. I'm happy to answer your questions, and I will confidently answer your questions. But the difference is you're focused on the person interviewing you and saying, oh, what do they need in this job? Why are they asking me these questions? Oh, because they have a problem that needs to be solved. And here's how I can solve that problem. When you come that way, who wouldn't hire you?
One of the questions I got when I was looking for a promotion, my supervisor was doing the interview. And at the end, it was going really well. But they said, Dave, what would happen if you don't get this promotion? What if we choose someone else? And I said to the person interviewing me, I said, well, you're my supervisor. I know that you know what's going on behind the scenes outside of this interview. And I know that you know what I can do. We've had a great working relationship. So I trust you that if I'm not the right fit for this position, you have something in mind for me. So that makes me comfortable to know that you have my back. So whether or not I get the position, I would love to do this. I think I can do a really good job here. But if I don't, I trust you that you know what the next step is for me. And I'm ready to go wherever you want to go because I really am committed to this role. And the look on their face was like, okay, like I'm not going to have a hissy fit and leave the room, stomping out of the room if I don't get this job. I trust you. And the look was just like, wow. I think that's one way to think about it is there are people who do talk about you behind the scenes. They have meetings. They're like, this Ben, what do you think of Ben? Everyone, let's go around the room. Ben's good. I think it's Ben. Be good guy for the job, right? So they've already had this discussion.
Yeah.
So rely and trust on them that there's something ahead for you. So be encouraged with that too.
Exactly. And I'll just say, if I was that manager, hearing what you just said, and if I was like, you know what, Dave just barely, if somebody just barely had something that we needed more than Dave, by what you said, I'd be like, wow, when can I find this next position for Dave? I'm just going to look for something.
Right. And you've heard of people who are like, well, that person was a good fit for this job, but they interviewed so well that we made a great connection. I'm going to create a job for this person because I want them on my team.
Right. Yeah.
So have that in your mind when you go into your next interview or promotion.
Yeah. Great advice.
Awesome. Ben, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for the book. I'm getting a copy myself. I'm ordering it today. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I just really appreciate you being on the show. And again, I'm so glad you're here. No Bears got you over the last week. And you're here to do the podcast together. It's awesome.
Thank you much,
thanks
Steve.
for doing this.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for being here for the Living the Next Chapter podcast. So glad to have you as part of our family of listeners. There's a seat for you just here on Living the Next Chapter, and I'm so happy that you have listened to all the way to the end. Wow, you are now my new bestie. I want to let you know that I host 7 other podcasts on top of Living the Next Chapter. Yep, 8 total. One of them is called the How To Podcast series. If you are thinking, you know what, Dave, this podcast thing seems like a lot of fun, well, I'll give you a secret. It is. It's a great, amazing, fun time where you can get to meet great people, get your word out there, promote your book, promote what your coaching program, whatever you're doing. Podcasting is great. And if you want to learn how to do this, what you're hearing right now, head over to howtopodcast.ca and look up the How to Podcast series on YouTube, whatever app you're listening on. You'll find me there. And I'd love for you to come listen to how to do this. And if you're interested and have questions on how to podcast, reach out to me at howtopodcast.ca. Thank you for listening. Talk soon.